Hey, Leaf here. So let me start off this video on the 930 fender flare welding installation by showing you the tech screws that are used to screw in the fender flares on the car before welding and cutting. So these happen to be, I got these from a big box store. They're 3/4 inch long and they're about an 1/8 in diameter. It's a number 8 diameter. So one of the shorter ones, there is a shorter one. I just opted for the 3/4, so there's a little bit more meat. Okay, so those are tech screws. The head is Phillips, so just use a screwdriver with the Phillips on them. A couple rules of thumb about these. When you get your fender flares, a good brand is Dansk, D-A-N-S-K, for which I got these on sale. They're pretty good. They fit really well. I just had to make minimal adjustments to them. First order business is regarding installation. This, in the rears, the rear fender flares, this lip is, as you can see, it's kind of, I flatten this so there's a right angle with how the flare goes vertical here. I pretty much, you have to flatten this. You can see going down there that you have to put a nice, you can see how looking down this, you have to flatten that flare like that because it's really curved. There's a it's curvilinear on the outside. So when you're looking at the rears, when you first get them, this will really roll down here. So you have to use your hammer and dolly and flatten that out so you get a real square fit. Now this is not really square here, so I'll have to pretty much square that up. I might just remove the this flare and make this almost a pure 90-degree angle right there because it won't. This on this is a 68 912 long nose, but that's a right angle there. So it's vertical here and exactly 90 there, and it's a pretty sharp corner. So you can see that the flare is not sharp there, so I'll have to do it, but I would only do it in this corner because you want to leave this nice roll here on the flare as you move out here. So number one, first order business installation is flattening this with a hammer and dolly because this edge is rolled down, so you need to bring it up here so it's flat, 90 degrees. But do not, there's a nice roll here, there's a nice curve. Do not do anything with your hammer and dolly to compromise that. You want to leave that intact. But the basic thing is flattening this inner lip here. Otherwise, that's it for the rear in terms of what you have to do to modify the flare. Now, with regard to fitting the rears, first order business. Number one rule of thumb for these flares is that this is all measured out, is that in the highest point of the wheel well, by the way, I converted to a long wheelbase. So long wheelbase is about 2 1/4 inches further to the rear this way. My axles now are 2 1/4 inches this way because it's an LS swap. I wanted the long wheelbase. And so what you can see is that the highest point of my original fender is right here. It's about right there. You can see that. And then when you look out at the turbo flare, this is kind of looking straight down the axle right here. The highest point is about right here. That's your 2-inch difference from here to there. So what I'm doing again is on my old short wheelbase, the highest point of the fender, which is where the axle probably was, I wasn't really concerned with that, but the highest height there, now, because I went to a long wheelbase, needed to be 2 1/4 inches back. So this was all taken into consideration. Now, the other thing is that if you, with a digital level on absolute degrees, angling this perfectly, that was 0 degrees right there. So first order business rule of thumb 1 for a fender installation is that the highest point of your wheel well on the new flare must be equal, it must be level with the highest point of your original fender. Otherwise, if you're not going to follow that rule, you're modifying the car. So I needed to keep that intact. Number two, regarding fitting the flare on the car, you should try to the extent possible the best to match up the torsion tube hole. So this is not exactly perfect, and I'll show you why in a minute or so. But so number two, try to match up the torsion tube hole to the extent possible. Now what's going to happen is that one of the biggest pains with installing these flares is that as you move, once you get this screwed in, as you grab the front here, you can see and I push in and pull, you can see the rear going up and down like that, so on and so forth. See that? I'm trying to stabilize it. See it come out and then move in. It's actually there. There it is. Now it comes in. Now it comes out. Now it comes in. So that's the angle. That's the angle when you're looking back. So you can, if I push in the front, the angle rises. The outer edge of the flare in the rear comes up. So the angle's not really horizontal of the bottom ledge of the flare. But as I pull in, it goes down a little bit more. So you have to match that up. The other issue is that I removed the RSR 1973 2.8 fiberglass rear bumper that I'm installing. I had that taped up and connected to the car in the rear, and that came out. And then this lip right here matched up really nicely with that RSR 1973 2.8 fiberglass bumper. So that will continue on like this. And then obviously you need your about 3/8 of an inch rubber trim along here. Now the interesting thing about this angle, whether or not this rear ledge here is purely horizontal or not, if it's down or up, when you're looking from the rear, yeah, you might be able to look from the rear on a new car and see that absolutely horizontal. But my son's an architect who said that when he helped me align these, he said that when you have, I'm looking at the plan for him now, when you have a curved surface like this is what my son, the architect, said. When you have a curved, flat surface like this, and you have the RSR 1973 2.8 fiberglass bumper that's curved, that also comes out like this, that's curved right below the black rubber trim here. So you have this curve, then you have the bottom curve of the fiberglass bumper coming up, then you have this third curve here, and you have a number of curves. My son said that in architecture you learn that when a lot of curved edges join together, they can form an optical illusion. So meaning that even if you were to try to make this level, it's going to be different to the it's going to potentially look different to different people because of an optical illusion. When you have curved edges, you're going to have the curve here, the curve of the RSR bumper here, this curve here, which is a curve, and then this curve coming in. When you look from the side, all these curves coming together, there are no flat lines here. So it's almost an optical illusion to try to determine that that's going to be level. Furthermore, so this is not going to be purely horizontal, because it just couldn't work out that way by retaining the height here and retaining the torsion tube mock-up there. So it's just something. It's something I'm going to live with. No one's going to really come up to the car and go, "Oh, this is not exactly 90 degrees here." But So there you go. You're just going to have to live with it. But I'm safeguarded a little bit by that optical illusion issue my son raised, that no one's going to really even be able to see that, because you can have an illusion, and it's going to look different to every different people. Okay, so what I've already reviewed on the rear flares, is you need to use your hammer and dolly and flatten this. And on mine right now on this side, that is not a real good 90-degree angle, so I'm going to have to probably pull the flare and make sure at least right there that joins up, because this is a really true that's a very tight 90-degree corner right there. Okay, so this hammer and dolly here, ensure that the height is equal with your older fender, and then line up the torsion tube, the torsion bar centers, the torsion tube hole, to the extent possible. If this is not matched, that's not anything I'm really concerned with, but you've seen on some videos online on YouTube that some technicians or associates are making sure this aligns. But to me, this was kind of the wiggle room here. And then this comes up, you can see in the front here that you do get a pretty nice fit. So I'm just going to have to, when I'm welding, I'll just, as you can see, put pressure on this and then tack as I go. And then I don't want to hammer. During shipping, there was a little crimp in this, so you see a potential wrinkle there, but I'll be able to work that out. Now, I made up my mind that I'm not going to hammer anything on these flares before I weld. At least I will put about every 2 inches, I'll put a spot weld before I take the screws out and the old fender comes out. I'll start lining things up there, but you can get a pretty good alignment, as I'll show you in a few minutes, as you install.